No, he's not here. Don't care.
No
Don't
one's
want to
here.
hear it. You know, here's the thing though, too. When I was listening to that intro, Liz, it said knowledge. And immediately came to my brain, I'm like, man, knowledge is at a premium when it comes to HubSpot right now. Like a
Tell me what that means.
premium. Like, listen, I've been doing these super admin trainings. And so I have this group of humans who have been using HubSpot for a while, are focused on using HubSpot better. And I'm asking questions because I like to do this thing called, I ask a question. I'm like, put it in the chat pane. XYZ, yes. XYZ, no. And I watch the answers to these things inside the training. And I'm like, wow. The price of entry, like, just was worth it right there. Like, fact that they now know this, and it used to be a no, and after this will be a yes. And I've had over the last 4 weeks, because this is a 12-week program, I've had several times over the last 4 weeks where I go into a training and I'm like, I don't know if people will get value out of this, but it's where my brain is at. It's what I'm thinking about. It's the way that I would communicate it versus maybe how HubSpot's communicating it. And so I go in nervous, and then I find these moments where people are like, holy crap, that's a thing. Or, oh, I should probably do that yesterday. And I just sit here and I go, wow, HubSpot is getting so big that knowledge is of a premium right now.
You know, what's interesting about this is that it is a spark of chance, a zippy twist of fate that it's just you and me today. Because this was not planned, which says to me, if that is where your brain is at, this is where I want you to stay there, because there has been a question that has been kicking around my mind and that I want to talk to you about, because periodically, some of our listeners may know this. If you're new, you're about to find out. Periodically, it'll just be me and George on the mic. And we do that on purpose. George has been in the industry and in inbound for over a decade. He's spent all of that time talking to humans, educating humans about HubSpot. Like, you guys know who George is. He's the best. As Dan Tyre said, he's inbound in human form, right? Like, we know these things. So I periodically just like to corner you verbally to just say, okay, let's get out of the tool and let's talk high level what is happening in HubSpot, in inbound. And the reason why I bring this up is because specifically the thing that has been going around in my head is that 10 years ago, when you were getting into inbound marketing, it didn't really matter what the size of your organization was, unless we're talking like super duper international enterprise extraordinaire explosion time. You were hiring an inbound marketing manager or a content marketing manager or a content writer who also happened to know how to use a tool. And that tool was HubSpot. But their focus wasn't a mastery of the tool. It wasn't the, becoming the deep specialist in it. For many years, that's all you needed. An inbound marketing manager or a content marketing manager who knew how to use a tool. And you created this super admin training because there is this rise. There is this need to have people who are genuine specialists in the tool. And so my mind is going in a bunch of different directions, right?
Yeah.
Are we now? Go ahead, George, talk to me.
So let me jump in there because I want to be very careful, because we're talking about how right now there's a need for specialists. By the way, there's always been a need for specialists. It's just when you list content manager or inbound strategist or inbound marketer or just even a general marketer, they were a specialist in marketing. HubSpot was a marketing tool. Like, it had a very small set of tools to help you do marketing and not have a Franken, system of trying to put this, that, and the other thing together. It had started this journey of the all on one or all in one platform. So we were specialists. Like, I mean, I went from design development to HubSpot. I want to be a marketer when I grow up. Let me teach myself how to be a marketer. Now let me be good at HubSpot along the way. And so these folks are specialists in their craft. The thing is, and I said this earlier today, is that when we started in 2011 or 2012 or whenever you started, most likely you were stepping inside of a Volkswagen Bug and you were managing a Volkswagen Bug. Now you're managing an entire race team. One human cannot drive 5 cars. It's impossible. And so now we've gotten to this place, which I'm interested to see where my brain goes when we dig into this, of like, sure, we might need a super admin, somebody like, again, I'll keep with the racing analogy. Like when you have a race team or multiple race teams, or there's an individual racer, you have somebody on the headset that's talking to you. They can see turn 2 and turn 4, and they can see that there's an accident or a wreck. And so we're getting to the point where we need like this super admin overarching, seeing, the departments inside of what's happening inside your business and inside of HubSpot, to be that person on the headset, to be that person that's like, oh, sales team, there's a wreck on turn 3. Be super careful. Like, let's make sure that we use that playbook and make sure we get that information and all that kind of stuff. But there's this other layer where you almost have to have this like knowledgeable, educated SVP or person that's focused on sales, person that's focused on operations in general, person that's focused on service. And so there's this higher level and secondary level that almost needs to happen. Guess what? We have a friend joining us.
Oh my God, Max.
Oh, hi.
Hi. We thought it was just going to be the two of us.
Yeah. Well, I'm here now.
And by the way,
congratulations.
Just to bring
we threw out the outline.
We've shifted gears. So Hannah, holding on, buckle up. It's going to be a fun ride.
Let's go.
Oh, yeah. Max, you know what? We're just going to throw you right into the fire with a question.
Oh, okay.
Do you have croutons with you? No, I'm just kidding.
No. He needs right now, maybe.
You could use some stress croutons. Yeah.
Some stress croutons. Is that a euphemism or just actual? Okay.
No, it's actual stress croutons. Yeah.
So here's my question for you, Max, because I've already gotten an answer from George on this. When you think about the past 10, 12 years of HubSpot, right? Mm-hmm. And we had a time when you could just have that inbound marketing manager who also knew how to use HubSpot to do their job well, right? And now we're living in an age where the HubSpot ecosystem is much more complex. Mm-hmm. George, I loved the analogy you used about how it used to be that you were driving a Volkswagen Bug and you could do that on your own. And now often for some organizations, you're trying to manage an entire race fleet of cars, and a single human cannot drive 5 cars. So, Max, my question to you is this. What shifted to make the need for HubSpot specialists specifically much more important today? Or do you think it's not?
No, it became a CRM system. That's why. I mean, if you think about it, like I'm trying to remember like how it actually kind of like fell into it, right? So it was like the marketing hub, and we had contacts, and then people were integrating it with Salesforce, and then people from Salesforce were stepping into HubSpot going, this feels a lot nicer and easier. Why can't I just do my stuff in here, right? And then we launched the CRM. And then as soon as you launch the CRM and start doing like, it was one thing that we had like the deal objects, right? Because, you had to do the closed loop reporting with Salesforce integrated and like all that kind of stuff. Then when the ticket object came and it was like, crap, well, everyone can be in here now, right? That's, I think, where it kind of took off. Because this used to be, I remember I was, my like not famous, but like my favorite saying to folks back when I was onboarding Marketing Hub customers was, there's a reason you don't see a lot of people with the job title HubSpot admin, right? And that was like my gotcha to be in, when people would ask like, how hard is this to manage? Because back then when it was just the marketing team using it, it was just the people that were using HubSpot were the ones adminning HubSpot, right? But then as soon as it became this giant business playground for everyone to be able to play in, things change, right? Because it's no longer just like the marketing team who all talks to each other and knows what each other's doing, and like they can kind of work in there and they understand what other people are doing. Everyone's kind of pointing in the same direction. When you start to get the other teams in there that aren't as aligned, that don't understand the nuances of the other folks that are in there, right? And don't know how to, get all these things to play together, especially if you weren't trying to build any sort of strategic flywheel, or you weren't thinking about the marketing to sales handoff or the sales to service handoff, or how service can, impact this idea of like promoters and all that kind of stuff, right? That's where things start to get crazy. And then that's where you start to see the rise of like the RevOps sort of role, or the theory of RevOps, or the whatever, right? Which, if you really think about it, is just sort of the cohesive strategic glue that like points all those, you know, business soldiers in the right direction and like gets them working together, right? You know, and so it was like, you know, in terms of like, when did that switch? It's like when HubSpot changed its identity from a marketing tool to a CRM, because that was what gave way to everything else happening with the Service Hub. Everyone could start to play in there. You had more teams in there, thus more confusion, thus the need for cat wranglers, CRM cat wranglers, right?
Yeah. And I want to double click on something, because I think it's really important to highlight here that Max is talking about and kind of dancing around, is that when you start to take a platform and a methodology and you start to add more humans to it, all of a sudden there's this confusion and potential chaos. And one of the things that I have found myself saying more and more and more during the super admin trainings that we're doing is, it's okay to talk to your teams. You should be focused on conversations and communication. You should be asking them on a weekly and monthly basis for feedback. You should be using that feedback to make revisions and do maintenance to things like your sales pipeline, your ticket pipeline, the settings that you turn on or off because it is or isn't working for the way that your company is using HubSpot. Because all of these conversations and this communication can lead into what is probably one of the most powerful things that we have, that HubSpot has grown from a Volkswagen bug to this entire race team, is the word customization, and being able to wrap HubSpot around your organization, around each department, around each process. But that happens because of the growth, because of the change, but because of the ability for a super admin to step in and have this communication or conversation portion of what needs to happen.
Okay, so all of us, though, are coming from the perspective of living in the tool every day, working with the tool every day. Like, we live, breathe, bleed orange, right? Like that is what we do.
I will say my walls are the only walls that are orange on this podcast right now, but hey.
I'm not sure legally I'm allowed to paint my walls orange, but you know, that's fine. You know what? My emotional walls are orange. How about that?
There you go.
So here's my question, though. What about the organizations that both of you are talking to who use HubSpot? Do they have this awareness that the increasing complexity of the tool for some of them is going to necessitate a new human? Like, what is the awareness of this with the people who are actually using HubSpot in different industries?
I would say, and Max, I'd be interested in your potential take on this. It's a mixed bag from what I've seen. There are some people who still live in historical fantasy land. They don't know what they don't know. They think that it's still a small system, or they've only purchased a few pieces of the system because they haven't opened their mind to what they truly can do. However, more and more, and you know, I know that it's heading in this direction. There are organizations and people inside these organizations that are feeling the pain that is taking place because multiple teams are wanting to jump on and use this tool. Multiple teams want to then add integrations. Multiple teams want to add customization. Multiple teams have problems and ideas. And so this one person who is running through the green or orange fields of HubSpot, frolicking around, loving their life, creating content and doing marketing stuff, all of a sudden is realizing, I'm in pain. How do I fix this? And so those folks are the organizations that I find are like, okay, we're officially giving you a new title. It's super admin, or it's RevOps director, or it's whatever you want to throw out there for this. And I'm seeing more and more and more of this, which the reason I think I see more and more of this is because, one, we started with HubSpot Academy, which, by the way, if you're going to start something to figure out if there's a true need, starting it with HubSpot Academy is a really smart way to do it. But we started the super admin boot camps. And the first time out, we had over 300 people sign up for the super admin boot camp. If you look at what Kyle Jepson is doing with the HubSpot super admin HubSpot user group or hug, and you see how many people show up every freaking Tuesday and what's happening on their YouTube channel, you realize that this ecosystem of humans that use HubSpot, of the humans that use HubSpot, is starting to feel this pain and realizing they need to move into this direction of having specific folks who are real rich and deep in knowledge of using HubSpot overarching, and I would even suggest in certain departments to help assist that just general super admin human.
In terms of how like I've seen it, I'm also kind of in the same boat where I've seen it like all over the place. I'd say like one thing I'm seeing a lot though, especially as I involve myself more with the sales stuff at Happily, is there are people that are in the realm of, I was brought in to take over the HubSpot and I kind of got to figure it out. Right. And, you know, being brought in to take over the HubSpot account to me kind of says, well, at least some people are making the decision to go, we could get a lot more out of this thing that we're paying for, but like we need someone to come in and own it. Right. So I am seeing that. But I think the other thing you got to remember too is like, you still can admin HubSpot the old way, depending on how much of it you're using.
Yeah.
Right. Because you still can just be a Marketing Hub customer and just hook it up to Salesforce and just.
But why?
Like,
Here's the thing. That goes into my question. That's my question. Can people still do that?
Which is beautiful because it means it means the product is still approachable, right? It means it's still accessible, right? You don't need to go hire a HubSpot admin to get started, but it can be powerful enough and it can do enough and it can be used by so much of your organization to get to the level of it's so complex you need somebody. And I think that more so speaks to its capability versus, oh, it's too hard now, so you have to have somebody, right? It's more so it can do so much more now, so it necessitates, you know, reasonably you would bring someone in whose job is to run it, right? But it's not like you can't get started with it unless you hire someone right out the gate, right? I don't know if you can say that about Salesforce. I don't know how many people are just stepping into sales now on their own. You know what I mean? But can you step into HubSpot and get started on your own, right? And then eventually hand it off to someone once it calls for that? Sure, right? It's still very accessible. You know what I mean? For smaller teams.
Yeah, and I should back up because I did kind of yell in the middle.
A little bit.
Talking.
There was some yelling. That's okay.
Like, why? Right? Like I don't disagree with you. I guess because of where I'm at and the journey I've been on, like when I think of HubSpot, I immediately, which I fully understand most humans probably don't do this, but I understand the connective tissues of how all the hubs would be able to work together and fire on all 8 cylinders if they're there. So I will step back and say, yes, you could just buy Sales Hub and you wouldn't need a super admin. You would just need a salesperson salesperson, but like SVP that's running the sales side of it, right? You could do just marketing. You could do just service. Now, eventually, and I've seen this over the years, somehow magically, no, not magically, HubSpot's gotten really good at putting them damn icons in the navigation to get you to click to wonder why you want to integrate. They do stuff on purpose, ladies and gentlemen. But eventually you end up dripping into these other hubs or these other tool sets. And that's what I would say to folks that might be listening to this as they're trying to figure out, do I need a super admin? Is like, do you have one hub? Are you getting ready to drip into your second or third one? Are you building over time something that has become more complex? Because you may grow yourself right into either being that human or needing that human, depending on what you want to do. But I will agree with Max. You can start out small. You can start out with an individual person that's kind of focused on this.
Plus their main role, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's the marketer that's like really excited to figure out how to get HubSpot to work better for everybody. But the problem is with that is if you're going to make a concerted effort to get your marketing, sales, and your service team onto HubSpot, that's when you should think about hiring one person to run it all, because the mental capacity it takes to be able to coordinate all of that stuff on the platform, that's a full-time job. You can't pull someone from their current job that they have to also say, hey, focus on making this work for everybody else, because then they're going to suffer in their own main role. And then they're not going to be able to put enough time and effort and energy in what it takes to actually coordinate that. Right. So like, again, if you're just using it for one function of the business, it's kind of fine if someone in that business function is also saying, I'm going to take on the mantle of making this thing work for us. But as soon as you start to say, hey, everyone's going to use this and we're going to run the thing on HubSpot, that's when you need somebody, because that's a full-time job in itself.
Which, by the way, I think I've seen more and more. And also, I think it's going to happen more and more. Which, by the way, Chris Carolyn is in our chat pane. Him and I are starting a new hug. It's the customer platform hug. Yay! And here's the thing. Here's what I want to shout out here is, if you go to, it's not a bundle anymore. It's the customer platform. That's how HubSpot is messaging this. This is a road they're going down. If you're listening to this and you have not purchased HubSpot yet, and you're literally looking at the pricing page and you're like, I think I just want to get the customer platform, I would beg you to immediately think about, and how do I get a super admin to help run the customer platform? Because now we're immediately multiple hubs, super levels of complexity, setting up a metric butt ton of processes, automation, communication for multiple teams. So that's like, for me, that's a defining factor. If you're going to move into customer platform or start with customer platform, then you'll want to think about having a HubSpot super admin.
Yeah. Or look internally at who you already have. For
who
someone
could become
who might be, who knows the business, that might be interested in taking on a new project, right? Maybe wants to get outside of their department a little bit, right? But has that added benefit of having the business context, right? Because I think it's a lot easier to find that person that like is maybe looking for their next thing, is passionate about the business, knows the business, stuff like that, right? And to bring them in, that's a little less scarier than going out and just hiring someone, right? Because you can learn HubSpot, right?
Well,
it's harder to have the context of the business down pat to translate it into what HubSpot is.
I don't know.
You don't know you can learn HubSpot,
no,
brother.
No.
Brother, listen, brother.
Hang on, everyone. George P. Thomas just said, I don't know if you can learn HubSpot.
No.
Are you kidding me?
That's not what I'm saying.
You are
Max, mommy and daddy are fighting.
Let me get the words out of my mouth. There used to be a day, Max, that I would agree with you. It was much easier to learn HubSpot than to learn the business. I would tell you, with how large HubSpot is, Operations Hub, Commerce Hub, Marketing Hub, Sales Hub, all the AI tools, like, I believe that it's probably easier to go through a 30 to 60 day onboarding and know everything about a business and how they're trying to go to market than it is to actually educate. I've been educating myself for 12 years to get to where I'm at with HubSpot. I've learned hundreds of businesses along the way with discovery meetings and helping clients over time. One tool, 12 years, hundreds of clients in meetings. So that's the only thing I was trying to say is I think it's easier to learn the business at this point than it is to learn HubSpot. Yes, of course, anybody can learn HubSpot. But man, it takes time. And
do you know what this reminds me of? Do you know what this reminds me of? I watched the DVD commentary of Armageddon recently. Don't ask me why. Ben
Why?
Affleck was on there, and he was telling me.
Stop.
Hold on, Liz. Why?
Hold on. You don't get to move forward. Why? Why?
Because I'm a single person who lives by myself and I had nothing to do. Like, I don't have kids. I don't have a partner. I can do whatever weird single stuff I want to do. So that's why. But you know what you just said, George, that reminds me of that. There's a reason why I brought this up. And Affleck told a story about how I think he went to Michael Bay or Jerry Bruckheimer. I can't remember which of the two. And he said, wouldn't it be easier to teach NASA scientists how to drill rather than to teach drillers how to be astronauts?
Yeah.
And apparently the guy just looked at him and went, shut the F up.
I
But facts.
think also here's why I'll also agree with George too as well is like oftentimes you need that outside perspective to be able to be like, hey, this strategic thing that you're doing in your business is dumb and you should do it this way, instead of having the baggage of, oh, well, this is how we've always done it. Right. And, so I do agree that like there are benefits of pulling in people from the outside that already know HubSpot. Totally. But also I think it's also a great opportunity for someone who's passionate about a business to be like, hey, I've got ideas about how I can make it all work. Right. Maybe I'm in charge of the HubSpot and I can learn it. I think there's benefits in both ways. Yeah.
So
Don't
I have a
disagree.
question
Don't disagree.
I want to throw in a question here, though. So we're talking in an idyllic landscape, right? We've talked about the inflection points when people need to start considering this, when organizations need to start looking at this, because it is an organization by organization choice. However, we do have to contend with the elephant in the room, which is the economy isn't exactly the strongest it's ever been, guys. We have a lot of organizations that are looking to tighten their budgets, who are being maybe a bit more conservative about their hiring, who may be trying to reduce potential perceived redundancies in their headcount. So my question to you is, George, because I see you pacing. God, the face. I'm so excited about this. George, we're going to turn it directly to you. Think about the business leaders and the organizational leaders who might be listening to this, who may make a fear-based decision rather than a smart decision. Like, what is the business case for potentially investing in this HubSpot super admin?
Don't be scared. That's all I'm going to say. That's what I'm saying. I don't have any good big brain takes on like economy shit. So I'm just say, don't be scared. Just
Here's the thing. And I know the words that are going to come out of my mouth are probably easier said than done. And if you're a business owner that hasn't set yourself up for the times when the economy is going to be hard, this is going to be really difficult. And I do understand that sometimes you just have to make payroll. Been there, done that, like holy crap moments. But let's be honest, if you look at the people who truly are successful, it's when the economy is down that they're doubling down. Like, when does Warren Buffett buy the most stocks and invest the most? When it's the cheapest, when everybody's dumping it, getting rid of it, scared to death, and he's doubling down. And that's why he is who he like. If you just look at that, right? Now, here's the other thing that I'm going to apply this to what we're talking about. If I'm just a marketer, please no hate mail. But if I'm just a marketer, it's very easy to get cut as part of like a budget line item. If I'm just a sales so-and-so person, it's very easy to be like, well, unfortunately, there's 17 of you. We got to go down to 12 of you, and it's a line item. Same thing on any of the other departments. However, if you are in an organization that historically has been thriving, has historically been using HubSpot, and you've elevated yourself to a super admin, aka RevOps God, buy a hat from Max. He's got them for sale.
Hats. Close1city.com. Please go buy my hats.
There you go. Buy some hats. If you've turned yourself into a HubSpot, aka RevOps God, and you literally have your fingers and toes in all of the departments, all of the processes, all of the workflows, like, you know how hard it is to remove that human from your organization? Because the minute you do that, there is nobody else on the planet that understands how this gets to that, and interacts with this. And so what I'm saying by this is, if you want to, as an employee, give you the strongest of abilities to not get cut because of the economy, then doubling down on your knowledge, becoming super educated in HubSpot, probably getting as many certifications as you can, and getting a title of super admin in your organization, and the C-level suite and owners knowing this guy or gal is a god amongst men and women when it comes to the processes that we have in our organization, you become almost untouchable.
Yeah,
well, unless the business just goes completely out of business. But
you're totally fine unless you're not totally fine. Okay, got it.
Moral of the story is if you want to absolutely grab your company by the balls and take them hostage, go become the super admin of your HubSpot account and just say, I own the keys to the castle, and without me, this whole place burns to the ground.
You can fire me, but sales and marketing can lose all intelligence.
Yeah,
you can do that.
Say good way, though.
Rebuilding all these workflows I just deleted. Hub ID.
You know what we're doing right now? We're making a lot of business owners and leaders out there feel super confident about letting someone have all the keys to their kingdom, aren't we? Doing a great job.
But here's the thing. It's funny that you mentioned that, but I would look, and as nerdy as I am, and as much as I'm entrenched in the business and in HubSpot and in training people, frankly, I would look forward to the day where I could just hand over and be like, just make this the dopest shit ever, because I just want to go do this and focus on this, and I want to be great at this. And I know that you have the brain power to like orchestrate this to be the most amazing thing humanly possible. Like I look forward to those days when I can start to add and insert trustworthy humans that don't delete my workflows, Max, but trustworthy humans into the organization to just make it better than it historically may have been, when it's like one person trying to work on one hub or one person trying to work on all hubs.
Okay. So my last question to both of you is the same. And we're going to start with Max because, George, you know what I'm going to ask. It's my one thing question, which means you'll have 5. And I've made peace with my RevOps God that you will not follow directions. And that's just my lot, my cross to bear in this life. And that's fine. So Max, what is your between 1 and 17 things you want people to remember from this conversation?
I think the biggest takeaway is that, or the biggest thing you should think is that there is no one answer on the when do I need a HubSpot admin conversation. I think everybody's going to be different. Everyone can afford different types of people. Everyone has access to different types of people in their organization, right? I don't think you should put a bunch of analysis paralysis into like absolutely feeling like you've got one chance to get it right in terms of who manages the stuff, right?
This is an 8 mile
options. You have a lot of different options, right? There's plenty of talent out there in the marketplace. If you're looking for someone who's just like, hey, we can get them up to speed on the business, as long as they know HubSpot, that's what you're looking for. Great. Plenty of admins out there looking for jobs, right? You got someone hungry in the organization and wants a little bit of change that you feel like they can run it. Cool. The resources available to them to understand the tools so they can take that plus their business their business context and passion to make things work together and get everyone to work together and make their coworkers' lives a little bit easier. Great. You got those people too, right? I don't think there's just like one answer. Just know that I don't want people to think HubSpot's in a place now that I can't buy it without hiring a full-time person, right? Because I think that's also dangerous too. And we start to think about it's just approachability, especially at like the single hubs of the world and the smaller levels, and how easy it is for a small business to use this that might have a lower budget, right? I don't want this conversation to scare those people away, right? I think if anything, it should give people solace in the fact to know that HubSpot can handle a lot more than we thought it could in the past, right? And that's why it necessitates the need for folks who can come in and be the orchestrator, the who's the guy who leads the conductor, if you will,
you go,
of the symphony of HubSpot.
He got there, everybody. He did it.
That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing, right? And you've got this wonderful network of people to help you make that decision. Keep that in mind, right? HubSpot is has one of the best communities that you could enter into and ask these questions. Hey, our business is getting this size. We're thinking we want to like bring these different parts of the organization, you know, into HubSpot. What do you guys think? Do I need to go hire someone? Should I look internally? Should I do this? Should I do that? Think about how many avenues people have to have those conversations, whether it's HubSpot user groups, posting innocent questions on LinkedIn, going into any of the different forums, talking to any of the number of people that have opinions on this stuff, right? Don't stress about it. Whatever you do, don't stress about this conversation. Just know that the right answer is out there. You can find it, and the right answer might be different for someone else. It might be different for you, but there is one, right? Don't stress it.
George,
Liz,
take us home.
No, what's your one thing? Like you've
My
been
one
sitting
thing.
here. Yeah, you've been sitting here asking the questions. You've been sitting here listening to us. Like, what's the one thing that you would want the listeners to take away pertaining to this conversation?
It's a mental flow chart. Is HubSpot critical to your organization? Yes. Okay, then are you going to take it seriously enough to ask yourself the question? If you're not going to look at that question seriously, if you say you take HubSpot seriously, then guess what? You don't take HubSpot seriously. So why are you even investing in it? If you're putting money into a tool, it behooves you from a budgetary perspective, from an investment perspective, from an ROI perspective, from a growth perspective, to have smart conversations internally about what it is you need to make that tool do the work for you that it is meant to do. Because if you are looking to HubSpot to keep the promises of growing better, whether that's just in one part of your business, multiple parts of your business, or all parts of your business, if you are doing a multi-hub rodeo, why are you wasting your time and money if you are not willing to have a smart and honest conversation internally about this question? I honestly do not understand it. I get that there may be fear based on like, well, we don't know what the economy is going to look like. We don't know what's going on here. Guys, you are potentially spending tens of thousands of dollars each year, if not more. In some cases, $100,000 or more in this investment. Right? So what is it that you are doing? You are either taking this investment seriously enough to ask the question, or you are not. I'm not saying this from the place of knowing what the answer is for you. As Max pointed out, like you may not need to make a change. You may have exactly what you need. But that's my one thing is that you're either serious about using HubSpot to grow your business better or you're not.
Yeah. This isn't my one thing, by the way. I'm going to give this caveat. But Liz, when you were talking, I started to think about, imagine buying a gym for your home and then not going into it. That'd be weird. But imagine the power that you could get if you bought a gym, you went into it, and you actually hired a personal trainer. Now you're going to get the maximum results out of your investment because you have somebody that keeps you accountable, that knows the intricacies of like how to work the muscle. Like there's just a different thing that you start to think about. But let me get into my one thing that it's not really one thing, but it
has 18 footnotes.
It's like it's steps.
Take us out, George.
Because here's the thing. Where we started at that everybody needs to pay attention to is knowledge of HubSpot is at a premium. And only you can dictate the amount of knowledge that you have about HubSpot that you can insert into the business. We talked about several times this word came up, and it just drives me nuts. This idea of running a business or doing a business through fear. And man, I got to be honest with you. Like I have a weird relationship but fear is false evidence appearing real. And if you're making business decisions about false evidence that's just simply appearing real, then be careful because it's so much more exciting. It's so much fun when you actually can run a business and make business decisions out of this life of abundance that you can actually create. And again, you got to make smart decisions and you got set yourself up for success, but it's just a way better place. So if you can have this massive amount of knowledge, if you can live in a life of abundance, then you have to realize what is the thing that I have to be thinking about. And again, I'm going to kind of go against Max. I'm going to tell people in this podcast, if I want to win a race, I have to put a driver in the seat of the car. Now, my choice is I'm the driver or I hire a driver. but I cannot put a car on the starting line and not have a human in it and feel like it's going to do me any good. So the decision is it you or is it somebody else? But somebody's got to smash that gas pedal and get to the finish line.